And we are live. Jeez.
Okay. Then I'm muting myself and admitting.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, that's really exciting, and it's also quite a learning experience for us because this is our first remote event. So bear with us, please, and hopefully everything will go seamlessly. My name is Agata. I'm one of the co-organizers of Latest.ux. I'm going to do a quick presentation about ourselves, and then I will give the virtual stage to our speakers, Valentina and Uri. So it will take some time. Sorry. Oh. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Which are bound to happen, so we can wait.
Yay. And it worked. Perfect. So welcome again to our meetup about remote design processes. And you're about to learn all about the tips and best practices. We are Latest.ux Amsterdam. Some of you might know us, some of you might not. But I'm going to do the presentation anyways. So we are the part of a global organization. We are represented in more than 50 cities, and our Amsterdam chapter has around 3,000 members, which is quite impressive. We also have a second chapter in Utrecht. We are here to promote female talent and increase female visibility, and we are inclusive to all background, gender, race, and expertise. So we are quite a welcoming community. We welcome women, men, people who are not from UX field, and people who are not from Amsterdam. So we also have a Slack where we usually make announcements about all of our events, and we also do their job postings and share discounts for conferences and courses and other things. We also have Instagram where we share same things but with a tiny delay. We also have a yearly sponsor. It's a UX Design Institute, and they are also offering a very nice discount to our members. It's €450 with the discount code LUX. And our speakers today is Huilin and Valentina Salvi. And last slide, promise, for your questions. So if during this event you will have questions to the speakers, we're going to use Slido. So just go to Slido and enter this code and then ask your questions. And now I'm giving the stage to Valentina and Uri.
Thank you. I think Uri is gonna, yes, share the slides. All right. think we can start. So, welcome everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for making the time for us. Really appreciate it. So tonight we're going to talk about remote design processes. So the question that we're going to try to answer is how can we effectively shift from offline or partially offline ways of working to the online environment and full remote jobs? Something about us. So I'm Valentina. I'm clearly Italian, as you can tell from my accent. I'm a senior service designer at Accenture Interactive Amsterdam, and my key expertise lies in creative facilitation, both offline and online. Already last year, so before this atypical situation that we're living kicked off, I started to familiarize with virtual facilitation, put myself in the context of really getting hands-on with it, learning more about it, follow training, to really expand my range of expertise, to the point that actually now we have a specialized core team of virtual facilitators in Accenture. So we're going to tell a little bit about what we learned so far. Tonight I'm going to be co-presenting with one great colleague of mine. Rui, do you want to tell something about you?
Hello everyone. So my name is Willy. I'm also working at Accenture Interactive in Amsterdam. My role is more as a UXer, so I'm doing both design and research in the Scrum team. So I'm very happy to be here to share some of my stories in the last 2 weeks, and I hope our story will be helpful and at least inspiring to some of you.
All right. So let's start saying something about us, about our team. So we are 30 plus designers at Accenture Interactive Amsterdam. And let's say that for us, before coronavirus, virtual was an option, but it was more a plan B. Like we were really proud in hosting workshops in our office, having clients over, bonding with them over lunch, and also sharing this messy room, so Post-its and a lot of things on the wall. But actually, with this new situation, virtual, of course, became our plan A. And as you can see in this slide, so it became our plan A, not only for what concerns like client meetings and workshops, but also for what concerns team bonding. So this, for example, is an extract from a farewell party that we did for one of our great ex-colleagues, Lian. So we had to learn fast and to adapt everything that we do into the virtual environment. So tonight we're going to touch upon a few topics that might concern really your life as a designer. And while remote companies, right, like Basecamp, GitHub, that there are many that were used to work already full remote, we're already riding the wave, so not much changed for them. For everyone else, mixed feelings might come up, right? Excited about new ways of working, new things to learn, but at the same time, not necessarily knowing how to go about these things and feeling a little bit lost. So tonight, Hui and myself will share what we know, our story. We don't pretend to know it all, right? But we really want to share our learnings for ourselves, for our team, to really inspire you and to make adaptations for yourself, to really have fun in really embracing remote work. But what are the topics that we're going to touch upon tonight? So first of all, we're going to touch upon the tools. Then Hui is going to talk about remote teamwork, and I'm going to round it up with some tips and guidelines on online meetings. I'm going to follow up with virtual facilitation, and then Hui is going to tell us all about remote user testing, and we'll conclude with the Q&A. Okay, so what about the tools? There is a lot of buzz around them, right? Which one is the best tool? Which one should I use for what? And there's a lot of information that you can find out there. We don't want to turn this presentation into a boring technical one, right? There's plenty of tutorial where you can learn more about them. But for sure, we want to share what are our favorites, why, and also our mindset towards the tools. So about video conferencing, our favorite one is Zoom, because in our experience, it really showed to be quite solid. No matter the amount of participants that you have in your meeting or your workshop, it works really well. And also it has quite cool features like the breakout rooms, annotate, gallery view, so it makes the session really interactive. But for example, as a company, our company favorite tool is Microsoft Teams. So also as a team, we had to find some hacks as well on how to recreate the same effect with a different tool. About whiteboards, we use Mural. We really like that. But we've been exploring with Miro, and we think they're both great, to be honest. While for chat and share, Slack as a sweet spot in our hearts. We really like to collaborate with Slack. It makes it playful, effective. But for example, for wider company information, we use Microsoft Teams and also with clients' email. So at the very end, there is no perfect recipe. This is really the mindset we want to get across tonight. It has to work for yourself. It is true that some tools might have cool features that really be easier to make the session interactive and to get the outcome that you're achieving, that you're willing to achieve. But ultimately, is the purpose, is your agenda, is your way of facilitating the session to really create a success. So if you don't have a cool feature, we're designers, right? We're problem solvers, so we can find an hack to recreate the same effect. So this is about the tools. Now we're ready to kick off with the first section. Rui, up to you.
Thank you, Ali. So in the first section, I'm gonna share some of my own stories about remote teamwork. And obviously, I'm also new to working remotely. So if you have any other solutions or better suggestions, to shout out in the Slido. So as you can see, my first day working from home, I was super chill. I was alone, but I was very excited and I had freedom. However, this was how I looked after 1 week when I lost my Wi-Fi connection during an important team meeting. Therefore, my first tip today is to really make sure that you have a stable internet connection. All right, so next to the Wi-Fi issue, what else can be a challenge for remote teamwork? So I looked into myself, and those are the 3 key issues I have. So first, I started to miss my teammates after 1 week. I do feel a lack of in-person interaction, especially considering many of us are living alone. Secondly, I sometimes also feel a bit lost in communications, that I do not have a focus on my work. And the last, the collaboration is just slightly different from what I used to have, so I need some time to adjust. So let's go through them one by one. So talking about a lack in person interaction, I personally see that it's just a natural result of working remotely. Meanwhile, sometimes we also have some common mistakes, such as flying solo, not asking for help, or relying too much on delayed communications. So if you do want to interact with your teammates, you need to create those meeting points. So what we did is that we try to discover team reason for meetings. So it can be a stand-up for your Scrum team, or it can also be the drink hour on Friday. So what really important is you really treat it as a ritual, so it enforces the connection with your teammates even without face-to-face. So luckily, my Scrum team actually took my advice, and we just do some stand-ups like this. And this was how it looks when we meet online for the first time. Come on, dudes. I'm not here to read your avatars, although I can hear your voice, but reading those CCRTGG doesn't make it highly better. So my second tip actually is to really turn on your camera. So this is how it looks now. Isn't it more fun? And talking about fun, the final tip I have is do share with your team with some fun elements. Do use your design weapons on your design team as well. So what we do is we try to use some service design techniques, for example, online energizers or online icebreakers to bring some fun elements in your Scrum team meetings. And I would highly recommend to do so because it really works, especially with the dev team. You can't really imagine how crazy they can be in those games. All right, so it seems that after all these experiments, our first issue are partially solved. So let's look into the second one, losing focus on my work. I'm not really sure if you have the same feeling or not, but to me personally, it seems that I have even more meetings in my calendar compared to the time I work in the office. I guess it's just a side effect that people try to keep connected. But obviously, you can't always be connected, especially if you want your design or research work done. And sometimes I also got lost in those small tasks or endless communication with my teammates. So I try to set certain strategies for myself. The first one is I try to set a strategy for communication. So me personally, because I'm working a quite small Scrum team, I always set the most important discussions in a video or audio format. This allow me to have instant mutual interactions for quick decisions. And the second level, I usually would go for messages, for example, Slack or Teams. You can still expect instant replies, but I can't be always available. And this applies especially for emails. So I guess most of us would check our email box twice or three times a day, but you can't really expect people checking their email box whole day long. So I made this very explicit to my teammates as well, so they all know what type of ways of communication I would approach. However, in some cases, email communication can also be a benefit. For example, if you're working in a larger company and you do want to track back how the decisions are being made. So for emails, it's also easy if you check the loop. So there's no best answers. Do try to find your own way. And the second strategy is I do think you need to learn when to say no to meetings. So imagine you're in an urgent design task and your full day is already booked with online meetings. So how are you going to pick the ones that you want to skip? You'd better make a decision tree for yourself in advance. So here is something actually I learned from another UX training where I would always ask myself a few questions. For example, will my absence block or delay the dev team? Do I have critical information to share with the team? Am I the only one to represent design team? Have I ever been absent for maybe more than 3 sprint ceremonies? If all the answers are no, then feel free to spare your time to somewhere else, create more values. And if all the answers are yes, then attend the meeting. And the last thing I would mention on this topic is do make a roadmap for yourself. If your Scrum team already has a clear roadmap, perfect. You can just use that one. But if you don't, then create one for yourself. Make sure that it's very clear what are the short-term goals are, which can help you to prioritize your work. What I usually do is to list out all my design or research goals for the coming 2 sprints. So whenever a small task comes in, which doesn't align with my goal, it can be deprioritized. And of course, do check it with your team when you make the roadmap. Make sure it's validated and openly communicated. In the last section, I would like just to introduce some changes has been recently in my ways of collaboration with my team. So basically, as I mentioned, I'm doing both design research in my Scrum team. And in our process, we call the research as discovery, where usually would not only involve the design inputs, but also the business inputs and technical inputs. Obviously, in the past, when we're still working in the office, we just hold meetings to involve everybody or directly approach the person that we need. But now we have to transform everything into a virtual manner. Later on, Valley is going to introduce something about how to organize online meetings, how to do virtual facilitations. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this part, but for documentation, now we also try to use more and more online tools. So in my current team, we are using Miro as the single place for choose. We just collect all the research findings onto this Miro board, quick and dirty. Everybody from the team would have the access to it to look for what they are looking for. We also use Confluence, for example, to generate reports where the business analyst and solution architecture can directly jump in, leave comments, or edit the parts from their end. And when it comes to the design phase, if your team is using Figma, perfect, because it works quite well in the collaboration mode. And my team, however, is still using Sketch. So here I would highly recommend this tool, which is called Abstract. So if you have multiple designers in the team, you can simply just create a branch and your work would never interfere with your master file or other designers. You can simply understand it as the designer version of GitHub. Anyway, it's really good. Do check it out. And the last piece, of course, comes to the dev. The first thing I would like to highlight is really make the communication to the point. For example, some people do their stand-up like this. I did my sprint ritual and sprint planning yesterday, but everybody was in those ceremonies. So what's the point? Do make your communication very efficient. If I were doing those updates, I would instead say, okay, for example, I did a user research yesterday on the onboarding phase, and my findings are ABC. So really make the communication more efficient and to the point is very the key to the teamwork in the remote manner. And when it comes to the deliveries from your design work to the dev team, there are massive tools that you can pick. Envision, Zipling, simply just to choose the ones that works the best with you. They're nothing new, but something that you really need to continue doing remote work. So as you see, I'm chill and happy again, and I do hope my stories working in a remote manner can be helpful and inspiring to some of you, and I'm always open for discussion. So far, we have discussed quite a lot about remote work with your team, but sometimes you also need to organize online meeting with your clients. I know that our service star Valentina has a lot of stories on this topic.
All right. Well, so now that we touched upon with Bui about remote teamwork, so really like long-term projects in a Scrum dynamic, now let's talk about online meetings, right? So general ones that can be one-off, that can be happening multiple times with your clients, internal. I don't know how many of you can empathize with this scenario, but to me personally, well, I've been invited to quite a few meetings lately, where actually the type of contribution that was expected of me was not exactly clear. And also at the end of those meetings, I couldn't help but thinking, oh, well, this could have been resolved with an email. Why by being involved into this? So the first point is really make sure you really need one. Very basic, but really be mindful of people's time and really wonder whether an email could actually do the job as well. But if you do need an online meeting, which is absolutely a likely scenario, we do have an online etiquette that we do apply, both for what concerns online meetings, but also for virtual facilitation. So it's kind of connected. I think we touched upon some of these points, so I'm going to go through it quickly. They're very simple. So camera on to really minimize the frictions is really, really important to see everyone's faces, see them in their environment. It really helps in connection. Second point, mute yourself when you're not speaking to really enhance your audio quality of your overall session. Phone away. It's really easy to get distracted online with multiple distractions, digital and not. So let's try to, put the phone away, close all the tabs, including email, and focus on the online meeting or workshop at hand. Also try to leverage the camera, right? So thumb up, thumb down to answer yes or no questions to minimize frictions and long answers, longer than needed. And also the chat. So the chat is a really good asset that you can leverage at your advantage. You can paste their links or questions to really avoid interrupting the flow. And then again, test your Wi-Fi. So we're really repeating this one because it's very important. So especially if unsure, just give it a test. It's good. All right, so, but how can they be short and sweet? And how can we, designers, try to contribute in making those a little bit more effective and smooth? So what we do is applying a 3-phase flow to any type of meeting. So it can be like 30 minutes, it can be multiple hours. It's very straightforward, but it really makes a difference. So we tend to split every meeting in these 3 phases. So a kickoff that can be even quite short, where you set the context. You maybe do an icebreaker to keep it playful. You set the agenda of the day, and also you deliver. So second phase, where you touch upon the juicy part of the meeting, the purpose, why you organized it. That can be showcasing something, presenting something, making an actual decision, and closing. So retrospective, next steps, action points, and wrap up. So really straightforward, but even just dedicating 5 minutes before the meeting to think about this structure will actually make a difference in how you deliver it. So what about the first phase, so the kickoff? We've actually an exercise for you that we saw working really well that you could actually implement from tomorrow already, which is the I do art exercise. I don't know how many of you are already familiar with it. Pretty simple and straightforward, but very, very handy to have everyone in the meeting on the same page. So it touches upon the intention of the meeting, the desired outcome, so how does success look like, the agenda, so the sequence of the activities that you're going to follow, the roles, who is facilitating, who is taking notes, who has to make decisions, the rules that will resemble, in our case, the online etiquette that we showed before, and then the time, so the duration, if you're going to take any break, and when it's going to end. This is very good for the facilitator of the meeting to do it either at the beginning of the online meeting itself, or to prepare it beforehand and to share it at the beginning so that you can really double check whether everyone has the same expectations on the meeting itself. So this is all about online meetings, and now let's touch upon the second section of tonight, which is virtual facilitation. So actual co-creation. When a video conference call is not enough, you actually need to co-create, to progress in a visual way. So we're going to talk about a innovation setup, right? So design sprints, ideation sessions, workshops. So I like to think about a workshop that I need to prepare as some kind of dish that I want to cook, right? You need to go to the supermarket, you need to buy your ingredients, you need to read your recipe, follow some sort of instructions. It's not that far from an actual workshop that you need to prepare. So let's have a look at what are the steps in the preparation of an online workshop. So one of the first tasks that you need to do is trying to pick the right format, so the right agenda, the right sequence of exercises that you want to do. This is a little bit of a checklist that we put together with some questions that can help you narrow down and really frame this format. First of all, think about your intention. So why this session and why it has to be a co-creation and not just a call, right? Outcome, so what kind of outcome you aim to achieve and in which format exactly. The constraints, which can be tools, right? As we said before, yeah, we wish we could use Zoom, but actually as a company, we're binded to a different kind of license. Maybe for certain features or interactions, you need to find a workaround, but also constraints in regards to time, right? Do you have a deadline? Do you have a specific time frame you need to stick to? And then participants, people, how many, who are they, and who are absolutely essential to have in your session, and who could be optional or secondary. All right, next slide. Yes, and about picking the right format, of course, there's a lot that could be said, right? And any format can be highly customized. I think one of the highest skill set in our team is really this one. So trying to customize every session that we do for our clients in the best way possible to match their needs and wants. But just for the sake of tonight, to give a little bit of a snapshot of the strongest formats that we use as a company, also part of our virtual facilitation offering, I picked this ones. So we try to use quite a bit the virtual lighting decision jam, which got really well known from AJ Smart. Is 2 hours long, is really good to get a team unstuck very fast. And also very good in our experience for a client kickoff, where you need to understand what's the problem like and to have some initial directions on solutions. Second format is the virtual workshop, so like 4 hours, so spread out in a day. And this is the highest customizable format because we can tweak it on becoming an ideation workshop, or maybe we can create a vision together or a value proposition roadmap. So we really tweak it depending on the needs. And then a virtual design sprint. So 5 days with an online and offline split. So a little bit different than the face-to-face one. But really, this is great when you want to push an idea, a concept to the extra mile and really come up with a prototype tested with 5 users within this 5-day cycle. All right. And what are, though, the adaptation points as a facilitator that you should take into account when shifting from an offline experience of running a workshop to the online setup? So 3 are the main ones. So duration, make it crispier if you can, because the online attention span of participants is shorter. And so as a facilitator, try to think critically about what are the activities that you can do as a group online that are a must to do together, and what are the activities that you could give out as a pre-session assignment to do offline to your participants, or offline homework, so after the session, to do individually as consolidation time. Also breaks. This might sound like secondary detail, but actually it is not. Rule of thumb here is to have like a 10 minutes break every hour, and it's incredibly beneficial to let participants stand up, stretch their legs, go to the kitchen, refill their cup of tea, and come back more energized to follow on what's next. Also pre-work, so anticipate steps. This is even more important in the online setup. So for example, if you want to co-create the user journey, let's say, try to arrive to the session itself already with some sort of draft, your own understanding on the context, so that you can tweak it, refine it, gather feedback during the session itself. But in my experience, it's easier than creating it from scratch, unless they're all experienced people and it's very small group to manage. Also, don't be afraid to assign tasks to other participants, including your clients. So beforehand, just inform them that one of them will facilitate the energizer. Another one will facilitate a fun way to do the retrospective. This is a way also to get them engaged on board, part of the session itself. All right. And this is a visual set of examples, and just to show you a little bit how we do things. Of course, they keep on evolving, and we have a huge set of templates, but those are just some. The one on the left is an engagement board. So it's basically a template, a mural. This is the one we use, that we send out to our participants for them to familiarize a little bit with mural, with the key features that we're going to be using in a playful way. So also make it a little bit of a mix with an energizer vibe. And the board on the right is a lighting decision jam session. So the session that I mentioned earlier, as you can see, with all the exercises laid out with instructions, information on timing, so that both participants, but also the facilitator, can always have a visual reminder on the instructions, and that will make the session incredibly smoother. All right, so this is it for the before part. What happened in the during, when you actually have to facilitate the session? So what are the tips and tricks there? The first ones are, get yourself a co-facilitator, right? So especially if you're not super experienced in running workshop online, it's very good to have someone else with you, because as a lead facilitator, you really want to focus on the flow of the activities, right? So on giving the right instructions, while someone else can keep an eye on the chat, can monitor it, can see if there are any questions, if someone has tech hiccups. So really having someone troubleshooting for you is super handy. So I would advise that. Second one, energy up, right? So as a facilitator, you want to embody the energy that you want your participants to feel. And online, voice is your main asset. So try to speak confidently to avoid the low and monotone tone of voice to get everyone on board. And don't be afraid to over-communicate. Be fearless about it, because online, participants get distracted. So it's really good if you can remind multiple times the instructions clearly. And the last one, the chat. So there are different ways, of course, to interact with participants and to keep them engaged online, right? There are macro interactions, there's microphone, chat, use of emojis, multiple human cues, as we mentioned, so multiple ways. But the chat is a very good one. It's a good asset that you can use at your advantage as a facilitator, because you can a little bit time it as you want. In just a few seconds, you can gather a lot of input, so give to participants the possibility and the feeling also to feel heard. But at the same time, you can filter, right? You can read it out loud yourself, and you can move on with the next item in the agenda way faster than, with the open-ended answer with the microphone itself. But let's be a little bit more pragmatic about this one. In the next slide, you can see two examples of it, of this macro interactions via chat. For example, on the left, let's say that you want to do a temperature check with your team in the middle of this session. So you can ask How are you feeling from 1 to 10? And in just a few seconds, by leveraging the chat, you can have an overview of how they're feeling, and you can spot at a glance where the participants feeling a little bit low and that you should focus your attention on as a facilitator for what's next. Or, for example, the break scenario. What happens during the breaks? Participants tend to turn off their camera, and although you agreed on a time, you don't exactly know when they're back. So you could ask them to, put an emoji or write their name on the chat so that as a facilitator, you feel a little bit more confident to kick off the next part without leaving people behind. And to conclude, a little bit of a checklist for the facilitation bit. So confidence with the tools. Make sure that you do a dry run for yourself. Like, let's say new role, try the voting feature, try the timer for yourself with your internal team. Like, really give it a dry run. That makes a lot of difference. So try to feel at ease enough. 100% is not possible, especially if you're first experimenting with those, and that's fine, but do your best. Emergency backup, things can go wrong, absolutely. So try to have a plan B. It can be anything. It can be the phone number of the co-facilitator, so that can be dialed in the call. It can be having a collaborative PowerPoint to use instead if the whiteboard doesn't work. Anything that can work for you, but try always to have a plan B. And Teams interactions. So for every activity you're gonna do, really have it clear how the team is gonna respond back. Is it by open mic? Is it by a chat? Is it with human cues? What is your expectations towards that? So you can be clear also in instructions. And then the last one, sorry, I don't see. Expectations. Had the color view on top of it. Expectations is to try to really give clear instructions to your participants. Like the remote setup won't necessarily be the same as offline session. So really try to be honest about it and to prepare them and to make sure that they have time to familiarize with the tools and join the session with the right mindset. All right, that's all. So I'm gonna hand over to you, Uwe, with the last section, remote user testing.
Thank you, Vali. So now we come to the last topic of the day, remote testing. So what could be remote testing? I think it's very straightforward, right? So the researcher is located here, but all the participants are located somewhere else. So as a natural pro of it, you can usually have a larger audience. You can recruit users all over the world. And in most of the cases, it's always less costly as well. So you do not need to travel to the place that your participants are. And it's perfect for quarantine. So what are the types of remote testing then? So on the high level, we can categorize remote testing into either moderated or unmoderated. So let's look into moderated testing first. So it's usually an online meeting with your users, which means you can have real-time interaction with the participants. You can ask follow-up questions. So it's very good for qualitative study. However, for moderated user testing, you can see that it's usually quite time-consuming. For one researcher, for example, probably maximum 6 per day. And for unmoderated user testing, since it's unmoderated, it can happen at any time, anywhere, as the participants wish. So the tasks are always predefined, so participants just need to follow them step by step. You can expect very fast results, but it still have a few cons. For example, as a researcher, you do not have direct interaction with your participants, which means you do not have much control on the testing or the users. So here I would like to quickly show some example of how an unmoderated user testing could look like.
So let's go up here. I think I saw categories up here. Yeah, there's games. Okay, so I'm going to go to games. And boy, I tell you what, I just don't get how this works at all. I mean, I get it a little bit more now after reading that, but I still don't get how it works. I guess I fund the project and then I get reward, but I don't get it.
So as you see in the video, on the left side of the screen, you can see the tasks which you predefined. In the middle is the screens that the user interact with your product or your prototype. So for some of the tools, it also allows for face cam cameras, so you can record the facial expressions from the users. And probably some of you also noticed this is a perfect user. However, if you want to recruit users by yourself, you should not expect a user to be as pro as she is. So this is also one of the risks you should consider for unmoderated testing. In the next slides, here are some tools that we usually use. So since we are running very small amounts of quantitative research, look back as a tool for both moderated and unmoderated is good enough. We also use sometimes the combination of Zoom and QuickTime Player to share screen or record the screen. And if we're using other types of remote testing, for example, card sorting or tree testing, we also turn to optimal workshop. But it's really up to you to choose which tool fits the best with your team because you have different test goals or project goals. The next few slides, I'm going to share some generic tips that I have for remote testing. And the first one is a quote from one of the training as well. So user research is a team sports. Well, obviously, many of the UX researcher would have the proud that they have the ownership on the user research. It is correct, but I would still recommend to involve your team into research. For example, in this remote manner, you can ask your BA or your PO to help you to define the test objective. If you're running moderated user testing, you can also ask your teammates to help you to do as an observer to take the notes. Do not fly solo. It is a perfect moment to let your team members to know your ways of working, how you come up with the decision, and it will also make your work more efficient. Secondly, for remote testing, it is fine if you overplan a little bit. As I said, compared to face-to-face testing, you usually have less control on your test in the remote manner. So at least get well prepared on the stuff that you can control. For example, a better prototype, some backup plans if the user cannot continue. And the last one for the high level tip is that all these basic testing rules applies still. You still need to determine the test objectives, think about the metrics, write the test plans. Nothing really changed. You just need to modify a little bit to make it better fit in a remote manner. So the next few slides, we're going to dive a little bit to the deep. For example, before the testing, when you prepare and plan. So my first tip is again to involve your teammates to decide on the objectives. What I found happens a lot is that UX researchers, we are really proud that we are standing for the users, but in the end, the product should still make profits, right? Therefore, ask the inputs not only from yourself, but also from BA or PO to help you to decide what to test first. So the test results would value not only from the user side, but also from the business side. And the second one is again about the format and tools. Once you know the goal or the objective of the study, you should find the most suitable methods accordingly. I know that a lot of researchers actually only run usability testing, but for example, if you only want to know the navigation system, how it works with your end customers, then tree testing could be a better option. And for example, if you do want to learn how your user will cluster the content, then you can also use card sorting. Just find the correct technique and accordingly the right tool can save you massive of time from prototyping a high fidelity prototype or conduct a usability test. And the last one, I think we've been repeating quite a few times already, is that do run the trials. Since you have less control on the test itself, at least make sure that you run a trial to test the tools and the prototype. Spare at least one day before the test to make sure you have enough time to make adjustments. All right, now we come to the conducting. My first tip is, again, never expect a pro user. Think of the worst scenarios. Imagine that, for example, your end customer will be those grannars who are not very familiar with digital products. Then what will you do with that? However, there are still some baselines you do need to follow, which are you need to make sure that they have a stable connection with the internet, the access to the device tools, and have all the test tools installed. Even though you do not have full control on your user side, you can still save the test if you do it as pro as you can. For example, if the grannar doesn't know how to install the test tool, you can send out instructions about the tools. Let's take a look back as example, because it's only compatible for Google Chrome. So before I conduct the test, I would usually attach this 4-step walkthrough in the invite email to educate my participants how to install the plugin. Let's say, again, a worst scenario, if the participants didn't read the emails, you can still save the test by being maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes earlier than the test to help the participant to set up the tools or anything that need and help. For remote testing, it's always safer to plan a little bit longer to make sure that you have enough overtime for any accidents and you do not need to rush into the next session. And my last tip for conducting is to do involve your stakeholders. There are massive tools that allow you to stream in your stakeholders in your remote testing. I see, actually, based on my personal experience, I see a big difference whether the key stakeholders are involved or not. It is much easier to convince them with your design decision if they see what went wrong. And to be honest, very few of the stakeholders would read your long test reports. So if you do invite the stakeholders as observers, there are a few rules to follow as well. They have to be very silent during the test, and probably you also need to find a way how to make them collaboratively make the notes. In my team, actually, we're using a lot on the Miro board again, because it's very close to the real life in the observer rooms. Okay, now actually we come to the after, which means analyzing and share. If you're using some remote tools like user Zoom, user testing, do try the analytical tools, which is integrated within the tool. It will save you a lot of time for analyzing. Once you come up with your findings, do share it wisely. As I said, very few of your stakeholders or teammates would read your report carefully. So try to summarize your findings into bullet points, for example, shout it out during your stand-ups, or just attach them into email chains so all your team members are aware of what your findings are. And the last but not the least, compliance. Do not forget to cut off the access to your prototype from the user side once you finish the test. And if you change the password, make sure that you inform your clients on time. All right, so that's all for today. Let's quickly do a recap. So first, remote working is not necessarily a more difficult ways of working. It's just different. And a lot of regular rules still apply. There are a lot of different techniques. So just try to find the ones that work for yourself. And since we are all new to remote working, don't be afraid to try, because practice makes perfect. And the last, do not forget to be patient and positive. This is very important for all remote process, remote teamwork, virtual facilitation, or remote testing. And one more thing before we move to the Q&A, Veli and I actually have some extra resources for you. We both wrote some articles about remote process on Medium. So if you're interested and want to know some more details on this topic, just feel free to check out. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so looks like now it's time for the Q&A section of our evening. Thank you both so much for your time and doing this online event with us. It's our first one, so we're all very excited. Hopefully it went well for you both as well as the attendees. We're always open to feedback, so please share what you think and any ideas for further suggestions. I would like to remind everyone that we are using Slido for the Q&A section of today's event. And if you don't have the link already, you can find it in our Slack channel as well as in the Meetup event page in the comment section. But for now, I will start with the most upvoted question, which is how do you get your product team on board for remote testing? How do you share results afterwards?
All right.
Wait, this is yours.
Yes, I think
Go ahead.
so. Usually, at least in my team, it works quite smoothly because most of my teammates are quite familiar with remote testing already. But before the communication, I would always share my test plan with all the teammates, so they would feel free to see what I'm going to do. And also in the stand-up, I would clearly just communicate in the way that, okay, on Thursday and Friday, I'm going to run the user test. Just make sure everybody is aware what I'm going to do in the sprint. And regarding how I share, now, as I said, we are using Miro as the single place for all the tools we found. So I would always attach a link to the Miro if anyone wants to see the details of our findings. But at the same time, in the stand-up, I would just say, okay, our key findings are A, B, C. Just make it very straightforward and in a very summarized manner. So they wouldn't necessarily to read my long reports, but if they do want to see the details, yes, feel free.
Okay, nice. Thank you for that answer. So the next question is, what icebreakers have been the most fun and or successful?
All right, I think for this one we can both share. Well, so in my experience, I think so there are many degrees, right, of icebreakers that you can do. Up to you if you want to keep it, let's say, on the whiteboard space, let's say on Miro or Miro, or if you want to also use the physical space, right? So the room where participants are sitting. A very basic one is like as part of your template, right, as I showed before, having a space for participants maybe to paste a picture of their favorite holiday destination or a picture of their favorite dish or who are yourself as an animal and why, this kind of stuff that can leverage also the mural image search functionality. So it's embedded in, it's super easy, or participants can drag and drop. Otherwise, another really fun one is like to ask participants to pick one object in the room of a specific color. So, all right, now you've got 30 seconds to pick something red. And then participants come back with something really, different shapes, different objects. And you can a little bit comment on that and sort of pick a winner, like who is the one that sort of found and picked the sort of weirdest or funniest object as well. So you can have a bit of a funny moment there. Uwe, do you have any other ones on top of your head?
Yeah, for me personally, I also very like to choose a one line because it's very easy to prepare in the remote manner, first of all. And of course, for the icebreaker and energizers, I think for different methods, actually it fits in different scenarios. So to choose one line, it could be like, okay, the team met each other before, they know a little bit on each other, but they don't really know some fun facts on each. So it's really nice if the end result can be some embarrassing effects. So people laugh and, just laugh around. That will be create some more fun elements in the session as well.
Yeah, and also as a participant, you have still control on what you want to share. So you can also decide on the degree of how private, what you actually want to share about yourself on the hobby level, something about your family, like really up to you. So also the personality of participants can actually shine through. So yeah, that's also a good one.
Those are some great answers. I noticed also within my team, we've been sharing photos of our plans and what we're having for dinner and all kinds of things like the walk we went out for, how we're training at home, how are we dealing with the kids. And actually, one of the questions we received is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? So to you both.
Oh, that's a great one. I love it. I wish more people would ask me that. I think I think I started with a really weird combo like lemon chocolate thing when I was younger. Now pistachio, I think in my maturity, adult woman years is my favorite.
Oh, I also have pistachio as my favorite.
Cool.
Yeah, but and it was actually quite funny because the first time I tried pistachio was in Italy, and I saw it's matcha because like in Asia it's also very popular, and they are both green. And I just asked, no, I want a matcha ice cream, and they say no, it's pistachio, and after that I fell in love. Yeah.
That is a good story indeed. So a question that's more related to the times that we're currently living in, what has your experience been like since most of the world has gone remote?
You mean on a personal level or like professionally?
I'm guessing this is more work related, but you can answer however you like.
All right, no, because after the ice cream flavor, I got confused. Like, you never know. I think, to be honest, it got even more busy. Like, I don't know, like my agenda is full of video calls, online meetings, and personally, I think my main struggle is also something that we touched upon, and starting to iterate and refine my strategies there, to create like boundaries. I tend to work even more hours than I should sometimes because I get caught up. I really like my job, and being at home, there's not the moment anymore of being, hey guys, bye, see you tomorrow, and I just shut down the part of my life. I'll go home and I do my things. So that has been, if I have to pick one, my main struggle. For the rest, I think it's been quite busy, also quite exciting. Trying new ways, experiment with new tools. So I think as a team we're actually empowering each other. We're learning a lot, we're sharing what we learn, and we're really also looking the positive side of this time.
Yeah, I think for me the same. As I already explained in my first section, I've been through some struggling, like missing my teammates, and also got lost in those endless communication in the course. But we just find some way go through it, right? Anyway, there's no perfect solution. There are some difficult time, but it's just really you adjust yourself to get used to it. So I would say for now, after those 2-3 weeks, actually, I'm getting more and more used to it, and I do not really feel the negative feeling anymore. As we just said, it's not necessarily difficult. It's just different, right?
Yeah.
And I do see that maybe in the future it could be a trend even. So people start to work more remotely, because I as Valley also introduced, a lot of companies are fully remote right now. And
it was a trend before, so it's not new for quite many people actually.
Yeah.
So
like
it might become the new normal for many more people, without, of course, the negative side, hopefully, of
and
this
coping
context.
with adapting, actually a lot of developers from my Scrum team actually quite enjoyed working from home. Yeah, totally.
This was indeed also one of the questions, whether you think that this will be a successful demo of remote working that will affect the world after the lockdown. And indeed, I've also heard that developers in particular are enjoying this time more because they're no longer bugged by everyone else in the team.
Yeah, no, I think so, personally, to be honest. Like, as I said, like it was already a trend, right? But in other companies, I think there was this a little bit like stigma, or thinking that, you're working from home one day is more than enough because we don't really have control on what you're doing or whatsoever. Well, actually, I think working from home, or at least giving the possibility to do so, working remotely, is really also increasing employee retention even, right? It's more tailored to your needs as a person. So I think it's an option that after this phase, after this trial, as you said, I hope that will be more accepted and more part of the normal way of working, just an option like any other, like going to the office, up to you, up to your responsibility and your way of being most effective and efficient depending on your tasks.
Okay, I like that bright outlook. So while we are working from home, how do you fight procrastination, or do you have any tips for the audience, maybe?
Any tips?
Sorry,
just checking.
Do you repeat the question again?
How do you fight procrastination while working from home?
I guess first of all, it's always nice to set up your surroundings a little bit. You know, the home office, but you definitely don't want to work in a very messy environment, right? So all these can bring you a little bit refreshing feelings.
Yes, I think, yeah, like setting also some sort of physical boundaries, right? Like, I don't know, I personally live with my boyfriend at home, so we try to really set the space in a way that when it's working hours, we have two different areas of the house, so that, yeah, now it's work, so we work. So no matter how many breaks you can take, you go to the kitchen, you refill your cup of tea, but still, you know, you get that vibe also about your surroundings and your home environment. I think that really helps in your mind to stay sharp and all. I read, I think, in an article or so that if you put your shoes on, you sort of feel like more, you know, sort of encouraged to, okay, now I'm working, I'm not gonna lie down on the sofa. For me, it doesn't work. I'm really happy with my sleepers, to be honest. So I'm not sure whether that applies, but it's something that I read as well, if someone wants to try.
Yeah, I'm actually with my shoes.
You see,
so feel the difference.
Yeah, so yeah.
I've heard the tip about putting on different clothes, like my work clothes when doing the work, but I had never heard about the shoes. We'll give this a try as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're at home, you did your work in your work time, but how do you socialize with your colleagues outside working hours? How do you keep that other side of life alive as well?
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, as a team, we also briefly showed at the beginning of the session, we tend to be quite active in organizing this kind of meetings or gatherings. Like, we have service design catch-ups, we have actually team meetings for the whole design department. So we've been playing around with sort of pub quiz style. Like also for the farewell of one of our colleagues, some gatherings involving like presentations of something, so a little bit of knowledge sharing, but also like funny moments, right? So some music, you know, having a drink together in Microsoft Teams, and having a round table, what everyone has been doing during the week or what's up next. We've been testing actually remote energizers as well, as a sort of as a way to both have fun together, but also test also these tools. So I remember in our latest one, a colleague of ours tested one of the shoes. So she asked us basically to upload and to send her a picture of our shoes, and basically we had to guess, you know, which feet were the ones of the photo that she kind of shared with everyone. Yeah, so yeah, you know.
Into our work hour as well, not necessarily like off work time. But me personally, I also really enjoy playing some online board game with my colleagues or friends. Yeah.
That's also very nice. All right. Another question is, what would be your main advice to inexperienced facilitators?
In embracing virtual sessions, right?
I suppose in the world we live in right now, that would be more relevant. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I would, so in experienced facilitators, well, if it's someone that has anyways some offline experience, at least in sort of teamwork or, you know, in setting up some sort of session, then I think the easiest is to start from how you go about it offline and try to adapt and sort of tweak the session to the online environment. If you're sort of familiarizing yourself with facilitation without having necessarily some sort of background in creative facilitation offline yourself, then I think it might be even a new canvas, right, for you to explore. So jumping straight on the line without any offline background could be also interesting. It's not my background, so I don't know necessarily how would that work, but I would advise absolutely, even if just focusing your attention on a tool that you have access to. So for example, Mural, there's lots of tutorials, templates already made. Try them out with your team internally, with some people that you trust, that you don't feel afraid to fail or to do some mistakes. So try to get yourself at ease using this bunch of resources that are already out there, so ready to use. Put them into practice, right? And organize a session with your network, right, with your colleagues. Try to really build your own practice, and then test it out to your team or in projects or whenever needed. So try to be a self-initiators there. But actually, I think it could be cool to gather some experience online straight instead of having an offline background.
Yeah, and for me, because me personally, I'm not a service designer, but I do have experience in facilitating. So in the beginning, I was also very nervous and not very confident. So just as what Valentina said, the first round or a new energizers, we always try it with our team. Just organize some small groups to try it out, and you do have the feeling, okay, so this is how it goes with real facilitation. It's no matter online or offline, just practice makes it perfect, as we said.
Yeah. Totally, because there's plenty of little frictions or things that maybe you couldn't necessarily anticipate if you don't try it first. So
those are great answers. I think that's also why we are here, because you have to start somewhere if you want to give talks. Maybe start with a small audience, then build it up, or maybe start remotely and then do a live audience. And I think the same applies to facilitation and all walks of life. I think maybe we have time for 2 more questions and then we can wrap things up. So if you have any questions you want to fire up, now is the time. And I will go to, how would you approach an online story mapping workshop to keep the participants active in particular?
Since that fits your kind of scenario in a product environment, you might have some ideas.
To be honest, I didn't really conduct online story mapping workshop before.
Okay,
but,
no
yeah,
worries.
it's most, for my personal experience, I did only like offline story mapping. So one of the tips is also very generic, just think of all the details. So it's really like you should guide them through step by step, because if you think on a high level, you always miss something in between. So those gaps actually makes a lot of senses and should never be ignored. Yeah. This is a generic tip, but not sure if it is really the answer to the online question. Yeah.
Yeah, like for what concerns me, like is not necessarily a scenario or a type of session that we tend to facilitate as service designers. It's more part of the sort of product team. So I don't have specific experience in this kind of session.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. We'll ask and then see what we get. So as a final question, a lot of people were mentioning different tools in the question, so I'm going to wrap this up into one instead. But basically, things like Google Hangouts were mentioned, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Mural, Miro, all of these things. But what is your favorite go-to tool, and maybe why, if you want to attach that as well?
Yeah, well, for me, Mural is really good in terms of, preparing a co-creation session. Like I have one tomorrow. It's super nice. When you have your template, you feel ready. Super nice features like voting, timer. Like as a facilitator, you feel in control, right? You can lock elements. You can keep them unlocked. Like also the anonymous link. I think Mural is very good to share the board with people that don't have necessarily a Mural account, while with Miro is a little bit more tricky there. So that would be my favorite. And then, for a sort of video conferencing, as I said, Zoom, but we can't really use it for work. So we need to find our acts with Microsoft Teams, which is still good, but I prefer Zoom.
Yeah. Okay. So from my end, if it's mostly for testing, then as I said, in my team, we are using either Zoom combined with a QuickTime player, or we are using Loopback. So the pro of Loopback is it automatically uploads all your videos into a cloud, so you don't really necessary to deal with the files on your desktop. And also it record both the face and the interaction, so very handy for researchers. However, you do need to have Google Chrome in your desktop, which you would allow the installation of the extent, which means a little bit more steps from the user side. So in that sense, if your users are really non-digital friendly users, then you can go to Zoom as well, because they just need to open the link and open the Zoom, even the web version of Zoom. That's very handy. Yeah.
I think that's a great tip. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate all of you joining. For all the attendees, as a reminder, this session has been recorded and will be on YouTube as well, so you can access it there. And we hope to see you in more events in the future. And normally we would give chocolate to our speakers, but maybe once we can actually see each other in real life.
No worries. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Now is the time to wrap up. Enjoy your evening, all of you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.